£11,407. Now then YouTube, welcome to another video. This is a video which I've been meaning to make for a while, but I'm on with changing the gearbox on the MR2 this weekend. I'm about halfway through at the minute, and yeah, rather than give you another MR2 changing gearbox video, I thought I'd make a video on just how much it actually cost to go racing in the MR2 last year. Now, it was something that I never thought I'd be able to do. I never even entertained the fact that it might happen one day. I was happy doing track days, and a lot of people used to say to me, why don't you just go racing? But I was always thinking, it's going to cost way too much. I saw just what the entry fees were, for example. I thought, it's just not going to happen. I'll just carry on doing my track days. I'll be fine. I'll be happy. And I was for a long time. And then I started getting a bit bored with track days, getting a bit faster in myself and thinking, well, maybe I should go racing. So what I did when I built the race car, when I did all the, getting the license and all that, I actually kept, which is very rare for me, I kept track of everything that I spent. So getting the license, getting all the safety gear, entering the car, getting the car ready, doing track days and things like that. I kept it all in a big list so that, mostly for me to keep track of, but it's kind of made making this video a bit easier as well, because I know there'll be a lot of people out there who are the same. They just want to know basically how much it costs, and hopefully this is something that I'll be able to tell you today. So I did keep a spreadsheet, and I've put it on my phone. It's a bit of a funny format, but how much does it cost? Well, obviously I tried to get the cheapest way in I could, and I'd heard about this MR2 Championship. I'd seen some videos online of people racing in the MR2 Championship. I owned a K20 MR2 at the time, and I thought, well, if I can sell this K20 MR2 for a decent sum, I should be able to buy and build and enter and race one of these cars. Now, obviously these cars aren't K20 powered or anything. It's a standard engine. It's a production series that I went into. All the engines are standard, and there's quite a lot of control on what you can and can't do, which makes, in theory, makes the playing field quite even. Now, let's start off. I'll just tell you straight away how much it costs. So how much I spent last year, according to my spreadsheet. The only time I've had to pay anyone was to get the roll cage plates mounted in. So I'm not a welder myself. You've seen some old videos, I've had a go, but I wanted someone to do that properly, so I got that fitted properly, and I didn't paint it myself either, but we did paint it with a friend and kept the cost down there. So this car was originally black, but the cost, I know that's what you want to know, the cost. How much have I spent? Well, according to this spreadsheet, so the total spend so far, and like I say, I've tried to keep track of everything, and obviously everything I've done myself that I can, and anything that I've bought, other than parts that have to be a certain thing for regulation, I've tried to buy the cheapest thing that will just do the job, because I'm not after anything. I just wanted to try it, I wasn't after winning races or anything necessarily. But we're at £11,407 was how much I spent on this car last year, and I only did really 3 race weekends. So I did Silverstone, I did Alton Park, and I did Donington Park. £11,500. So that's quite a considerable amount more than what I sold my K20 one for. Like I said at the start, I was thinking this would cover it all. Definitely didn't, and everything that I've got in the car, I've not had any kind of, I've not looked for any sponsorships or anything like that. Perhaps wish that I should have done. You probably noticed that I didn't shout about the car much at all on YouTube to start with. There was a bit of hiatus when I was not on YouTube last year, and I was mostly just building this car up in my free time. And I didn't want to put it on YouTube because I didn't want to be entering this race series as the YouTubers entered the race series, if you know what I mean. I wanted to kind of stand away from it a little bit, so I didn't get any help of anything like that. I've not got a bank of mum and dad or anything like that. Some people have. And obviously I've got no history in anything to do with motorsport, so I wouldn't expect to start with sponsorships just because of this, and I thought that was the wrong way to even think about doing it. But what I'm going to do first is tell you why I picked the MR2 Championship, because there's a lot of budget race series that you could enter. There's things like the C1 Championship and the Ford KA Championship are quite popular, and I did actually consider it because at the end of the day I just wanted to race. But what I figured out after doing some sums on the MR2 was this wasn't going to be any more money. It was about the same money really, so for the same money would you rather race a C1 or a Ford KA or an MR2? I had a bit of experience obviously with the MR2 already, so I thought, you know, I know how the suspension goes together, I know how little bits and bats work on the car, and you know, I've already started learning how to drive this mid-engined sports car, right? So I thought, you know, I've got a head start on the MR2, it's going to be about the same money. One of the main reasons I picked the MR2 and why I was looking at these production series like the C1, and obviously there's quite a few, not just the ones I've mentioned, but it should mean that because the cars are standard engines, they're all on the same tyres, same tyre size, limited modifications, there's really not a lot you can do. So there's really not a lot you can do to the car, but there are things you can do for each race, such as, you know, having fresh tyres every race, and you know, just little bits like that where the bank can win a little bit, or the bank can get a little bit of a competitive edge if you want to keep shoving money into it. I did 3 track days and 3 race events all on the same set of tyres last year, and as you can probably tell by some of the videos, it was getting quite hard to handle, especially in the rain. The last 2 race events were in the rain, so you know, it was getting really hard to handle the car, and if I'd had fresher tyres, I could have been more competitive, I'm sure. But overall, compared to something like, I was looking at, there's a series called Road Sports, which is like a 45-minute race, but a lot of the series in the UK, they don't have things like, you know, control tyres, and it's on control suspension as well. Like, you can only run a certain suspension and things like that. So it's pretty limited, but there are also ways, like I say, with tyres and things, that you can have that competitive edge if you want to spend a bit more on the championship. Now, obviously, I've told you how much I spent last year, and that was only on 1 set of tyres. So, you know, it's worth remembering, of course, the first season is always going to be the most expensive, or maybe not as you progress, but you've got so much to buy, you've got so many things that you only buy once maybe, that you have to get. You have to get obviously your license, which is, you know, you're going to have to get it once. You have to renew it every year. You have to pay a renewal fee every year to renew it, but you only have to do that initial getting the license once, and things like that. Right, I'm now going to break down some of the costs, because, you know, 11.5 grand's quite a lot. So I kept track of it. I put things in categories so I could quickly reference, you know, where the money had gone. The categories I picked were brakes, electrical, engine, exterior, interior, license, so, you know, what I paid to get the license, the race entries. There's a big section called safety, which has got all the safety gear that I had to buy, the fire extinguisher, whatever. Suspension, all the different bits that I did to the suspension on the car. Testing, what I paid for testing days. Like I said, I did 3 track days testing various things on the car, transmission, and then wheels and tyres. So, you know, I kept things in categories so I could try and keep track of where the money was going. What I'm going to do, I think, because I'm not quite getting the full Excel experience on my phone, I'm going to put little things on the screen so you can see breakdowns of what I spent where, and things like that. Now, I'm not going to say that I did it the cheapest way. Obviously, I tried to do it the cheapest way, but there's a lot of things on here which I bought, which if you just want to go racing, you don't have to do this. Like, I bought corner balancing scales. You know, you could just pay someone instead. I wanted to make the investments of it for everything. The test days, did I need to do 3 test days? Well, I would say yes, and I would recommend anyone does as much testing as they can. Each of the test days that I did, or 2 out of the 3 of the test days I did, were at circuits that I was racing on as well. So I got that experience of the circuit, you know, learned my lines, and, you know, tried to learn how to go fastest. Now, obviously the safety one is massive, and there's no getting around that. Your car is going to get scrutineered. The marshals are going to check that you've got X, Y, Z, that you meet all the regulations, that all your kit's in date. It's just how it is. You've got to have things like a fire extinguisher, full race suit, boots, socks, underwear, all the fireproof stuff. Obviously a nice helmet with a hands device, with the poles and things like that. So I got a lot of stuff there. So the safety stuff, I mean, I'll put on screen just how much the safety stuff was, because, you know, it's quite a big thing. Now, a lot of the other stuff, like suspension, you wouldn't have to do all of this, but my car, you saw some of my car, you didn't see how raggy it was when I got it. So I bought this originally off Josh. He used it for a little bit, but it was an MR2 that was built out of spare bits that were laying about someone's workshop. It's definitely not the best. There's a bit of a regret there for not buying a better shell to start with, and I've still got some problems, such as rust and things like that on the car. How rigid the chassis is going to be with having this orange stuff all around it, I don't know. I mean, obviously I've done quite a bit of work to to try and treat the rust and coat the subframe and things like that. MR2 specific things that you'd have to do, which you might not get with a C1 or something like that, going back to that series. But I'll give you my thoughts on the C1 Championship later, because I'm not. Why would you want to race a C1? I don't know. If you can do an MR2 for the same money, right? So getting a license now, a bit of a shout out here to the Audi, because I did my ARDS test, right? You have to do your ARDS test in a manual car if you're not at a circuit that supplies one. A lot of the circuits will give you a car to do the testing, and then you drive around with an instructor next to you. Just show that you're competent on track and you're not a mong, basically. Obviously, I had the Audi at the time, a manual transmission, PD130, and yeah, we did about 7 or 8 laps of Cadwell in the Audi with the instructor next to me after doing the test. He was loving life. I was loving life as well, obviously, in the bus, chopping everyone. That was a good time. So yeah, just the licence costs, just to register for the club and the licence. Now the 750 Motor Club, which is what the MR2 Championship is part of, is definitely, I'll stick my neck out and say it's the cheapest way to get into series. It's the least expensive, let's say, not cheapest. Because I don't know what the entry fee is compared to BRSCC and stuff like that, but I've heard it's a bit higher, and I think it's reasonable, really, for the club membership. When I'm scrolling through this list now, I'm really struggling to see 11.5 grand as well, but the cells don't lie. There's some formula, isn't it? So where did the bulk of the money go? Well, the race entry fees, so the race weekend for the MR2, it's usually just one day, and what happens is there's a 15-minute session in the morning, which is for practice/qualifying, and then there's 2 15-minute plus 1 lap races, and that, to enter, costs £340 average, according to this. I said I did Silverstone, Alton Park and Donington Park last year, and they all costed £340 to enter. So the race entry fees, they're quite high, but I mean, that's only still not even 10% of what I've paid, or is it? Roughly 10% of the costs of building the car and getting myself ready for it. So where did the rest of the money go? Well, I bought 2 MR2s, that's another 10%. One was 600 quid, this one, and the other one, the blue one, was 400 quid. Obviously, I got the engine out of the blue one, I got the hardtop out of it, and I got quite a few other bits for this. So I got my money's worth, gearbox and things, I got my money's worth out of that one. And obviously the car I got off Josh had quite a lot of bits on it as well. I sold some suspension off it and stuff like that, just little bits. So I've not actually accounted for that in here, but the stuff I sold off that other MR2 was probably about £200 worth. Brake pads. Now we'll talk about brakes a little bit. I put some new brake calipers on the rear of this, not the front. I rebuilt the calipers though. Didn't put good discs on it. Josh gave me some discs with it, and they've done all right, to be fair. I don't know. I shouldn't really talk them down. They were blueprint and something else, just something regular run of the mill, but pads. So you're limited in the series to just run the standard brake sizes and the standard brake calipers, but pads are free. And discs are free, but they can't be slotted and grooved or anything. They've got to be blank discs. So you can get a bit of an edge there. So I bought some Carbatech pads, which is what I'd had in my K21. And they're not cheap, it was about, according to this, front and rear set was close to £400 just for pads. So you could have put some EBC in there, you could have been a bit cheaper. And there are people on the grid that I know that do run EBC, and they seem to do all right about it, but I was just trying to rule out anything in a production series like this where you can get a competitive edge, and you try and do it. Hey, you want to try and be competitive, and I was trying to be competitive. Now, I'm not going to just keep reeling through the list, because I'm sure I'm sending people to sleep, but there are 72 items on this list of different things that I had to buy. I'm just looking if I've included anything that perhaps isn't required. There's a camber caster gauge in here which I bought, which was £50, which obviously you don't need unless you're going to do it yourself. But why wouldn't you want to do it yourself? The transponder, that's an interesting one. That's under license. So the transponders are a bit of a funny one, because what used to happen is, back in the day, maybe no more than 5 years ago, and in the past, you would buy a transponder and it'd be yours. You'd put it on the car, you'd put your code in, the reg code of the transponder, and yeah, that'd be it. You'd be away. Now what happens now, instead, you can't buy these transponders anymore. I don't know if the manufacturer just stopped making them, or if they've got some kind of deal with how the new system works. Because the new system, you buy a transponder just the same, it's a lot cheaper. There's a reason for that. It's all on a subscription now. So I paid for the transponder and a 2-year subscription £180. And when that 2 years is over, I'll have to renew the subscription, or I won't be able to race. I won't be able to get the timing, you know. So, whereas before you would buy it and you'd have it, now it's on a subscription. Now, I guess that's a pretty modern way of doing things. It's how everyone, everywhere, is making money these days, and that's just how it is. And when you're getting into racing now, 2020 and beyond, it's pretty much the only way you're going to do it, unless you try and buy a second-hand transponder off someone. Now, of course, the second-hand market for these transponders has just gone nuts. So it would cost probably about £400 or so to get one of these transponders, and you can hire them on the day, but really you want to be getting your own, don't you? Yeah, there's nothing else really on here which I could have got away with not getting. I mean, things like the battery, I got the cheapest battery I could. I got a golf cart battery, a 12 volt, 22 amp hour golf cart battery. That's what I used to start the car and run the heaters and things. I could have got a lighter battery, and I might do in the future. That battery weighs about 6 kilos, and I could get one of the dead weight batteries like what's on the M3, that'd weigh about 2 kilos. So a little bit of a weight saving to be had there, but obviously a lot more money. That battery that I got was about £35. So yeah, the pound per kilo ratio, not too strong there, but I'm getting to that point now with the MR2 where there's not a lot more I can do. I'm trying to lose weight myself because I'm about 30 kilos overweight in this car. So I'm trying to lose a bit of timber myself. Might get one of them posh batteries, and then we'll be more about on the thing. I've got a drive to be quite competitive this year, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, there's nothing on here that I could have got away with not getting. So I'll put the list up somewhere so you can see it as well, and then you'll have an idea. Actually, what I'll do is I'll make a copy of this spreadsheet available publicly, and then you can actually look and you'll have an idea of how much it costs to build one, right? And you can maybe decide, oh, I don't need that, or I don't need this, or I've already got one of them, so this will bring the cost down. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll make this public so you can see it. But that's enough of the cost. So yeah, that's the bottom line. Is I've spent over 11 grand to do 3 race weekends in this, and you know, I was getting competitive towards the end. If you've watched the videos, you'll know Silverstone, the first race, I wasn't competitive at all. Absolute box fresh car, but we were just far too slow in the straights. Made quite a few changes to the car after Silverstone, just try and get that speed up. I got a new exhaust, changed the air filter a bit, did all the usual MR2 hacks of cleaning maths and things like that, but ended up being the timing that was out, so made a massive difference. But yeah, again, that was something that I figured out on my own, or had to, because you know, yeah. So I figured it out myself, got it done, got it tested, and then the car was a lot faster. And then when I went to Walton, the race after, I had quite a good race. It was wet, and I was a lot more competitive. Managed to get a top 10 finish in the second race, and then I did the same at the third weekend at Donington as well, the final race of the season in December. So let's go back talking about MR2 Championship. Do I think it's a good championship to join? Well, yes and no. Really, and I have to say no at the end, because one thing that I didn't realise about this one, and I presume it's the same for a lot of them now, is just how popular it is. I've seen some races online, they were all from like 6 or 7 years ago. I thought, oh, perhaps there's not that many people here. And I went to see a race at Croft, and there were about 40 cars on the grid. I thought, hang on, how have you got 40 cars racing? And there's things like the BMW Championship and the other race series that were on the same day, and they had grids, you know, a quarter, a third of the size. I was like, how's this working out? And it didn't really click at the time, but it's a really popular series, and it's kind of a victim of its own success, in a sense that I don't always get to race. Just because I've signed up and paid, and we're having this issue right now for the first race in the season, there's far too many cars want to race in this series than there are spaces on the grid. And you know, when we're at this level of club motorsport, I don't know how it gets decided who races, but I started the season slow last year because I wasn't allowed to race in the first one because there wasn't enough capacity. Managed to start at Silverstone, obviously, had engine troubles, and then I missed 2 races after that because I was, you know, building the car up, trying to find out why it was so slow. So I wouldn't say it's a regret, because I think I picked a really good championship to start racing in, and I've got the racing bug now. You know, I don't really want to stop doing the racing. It's really popular, and perhaps if I'd have looked at a championship that wasn't as popular, I might be in the same situation where, I might build my race car up, but then at the end of the season they're like, we're not doing this championship anymore because it's not popular enough, it doesn't generate enough revenue. So, it's catch-22, it's club level, but I mean, if you want to compete for the championship, which I want to have a go at, I'm not entering these races just to say that I'm a race driver. I'm entering because I want to try and get to the front of the grid. But because of how busy it is, it might not even get on the grid. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Obviously, I'm still going full steam ahead. We're trying to get the car ready. I'm still going to buy new tyres for it. I'm still going to do everything I can to get there, to hopefully get there. But what happened last year was I did all this again, and then about a week, maybe a week and a half before the actual first race was supposed to be, I got an email saying that I wasn't on the grid. So pretty disappointing, as you can imagine. But turns out that's how it works. So yeah, just be prepared. And I think, I don't want to blow steam up my own arse here, but perhaps me doing the odd video on the race series and stuff might have acted against me there. If there's anyone out there who's watching and thought, I'm having a go at that, and you've built a car and you want to race this season in the MR2 Championship, well, that's another spot which I might not get, which probably sounds pretty selfish, but I'm just going to conclude with some things that perhaps I'd have done differently. Then maybe you won't make the same mistake as me. Now, first one, testing. Now, I did do a track day in the car after building it, way before it was time to go race or anything like that. And I thought the car was all right. It handled well, it stopped well, and it was slow, but I didn't quite realise just how slow it was. So I should have had the car on a dyno, and I've still not had it on a dyno. I would like to have it on a dyno, but I'm struggling a little bit. There's a few things I want to test on the car, just to check that the air filter's doing what it should be and things like that. But yeah, I did the testing to check the car out, and it was safe and everything worked. But I didn't know just how slow it was until I went on the grid. And then obviously setting off the grid for the first time, everyone just comes steaming past me. That's not the case now. The car is, I would say, competitive in a straight line. But there's still a few unknowns, like I say, about the air filter and things that, you pick a production series like this because I thought, slam an engine in it, it'll be fine. But yeah, I wasn't on the money with the power. It was off. So although I did test the car, then I think getting a dyno would have been a good way. And you can only enter these races once, right? It's only that one day in time. You can't go back. You can learn from your mistakes, which obviously I've done quite a lot of, but yeah, we can't go back in time. So it would have been nicer to have that straight line performance in my first race, been a bit more competitive there. And the two races since have been in the rain. I've not done a dry race yet with the car being competitive, so it's a bit of a letdown on my side. Another thing I would have done differently was not to have the same tyres on track days and test days that I was going to race on. What I'm doing this season is, I've got some spare rims just down there. I'm going to be using one set for racing and race weekends, and then another set for testing. And I'll still be using these for testing. Now, tread-wise, they're getting close to the limit. Like I said, these did 3 track days and 3 race weekends. But a track day is definitely more intensive on tyres than a race day, I think. When you're doing a race day, so you're going out, the practice run, you do a little warm-up, and then you'll do 14 minutes or so of driving as fast as you can with the traffic. Then obviously the racing, you're going as fast as you can for 15 minutes. So you're doing, say, 45 minutes of track time per race day, right? When you go on a track day, or when I go on a track day, should I say, I'm out there for as much as I can. So I'm doing probably maybe 3 times more time on track than I would do on a race day. Easy, I'd say. Easy 3 times more. So in reality, every track day that I've done, when I was testing the car, I've put those tyres through 3 or 4 different race days. So you could argue in a sense that these tyres, although they've done 3 race days, they've actually done quite a lot more than that because of all the heat cycles that I put them through on track days. So you're going out on track, driving hard, coming back in, letting it cool down, going back out, and you use a tank of fuel, no problem. It's pretty good on fuel, this thing, I will say. But yeah, I made the mistake of using the same tyres for testing and for racing, because then when I got to the end of the season, although, you know, physical condition doesn't look too bad, they've just gone. They've gone. You can see the videos from Donington. I mean, especially when this AW11 just absolutely drove past me, and I'm doing all I can to try and keep my car, you know, going as quickly as I can in the conditions, but I just, no traction, and especially at the rear. Obviously with this car being mid-engined and having a rear bias, it does eat the rear tyres slightly faster than the front. But yeah, I will be making sure that I have a set of tyres that I only use for testing, and I'll have a set that I only use for racing, because then I should hopefully keep the competitiveness up. And when I will actually change those tyres, well, I don't know. I think I'll probably do at least 2 race days on them. But I mean, well, I mean, I'm going to do a video later on today where I'm going to talk about some changes on the YouTube channel. I don't know if that'll come before this video or after, but if I can generate some revenue, then I can hopefully start having fresher tyres like every 3rd race or so. But yeah, don't do that. If you want to be competitive, then, you know, that was stupid of me. I didn't realise really until the Donington day just how little grip I had. And when I was walking around the paddock and I was seeing, you know, everyone on these brand new Toyo R888 tyres, and I'm just there thinking, wow, I've put my tyres through so much shit this year. And yeah, it was interesting to say the least. I got 2nd in class though at Donington, so there was 9 in my class in the Roadsters, and I finished 2nd. So I was pretty chuffed with that, considering how the car felt all day, and obviously I nearly had a big accident at one point as well. I can't really think of many other things that I would do differently other than getting the power checked out and not using the same tyres all the time. I'm looking forward to doing this more in the future. I'm going to keep doing the racing and just building up my knowledge. And one thing that I'll say, right, one thing that comes to mind that I realised is Racecraft. Now, the term Racecraft might be a bit foreign to a lot of you. It was to me. I thought, because I can control a car well, that I would be fast on circuit. No, it's not how it works. Now, I don't want to sound like I was completely dumb. I didn't think I'd be going in and winning races straight away, like some of the internet might have suggested. I was, what's the word? I'm quite humble in that, because I know how I learned to drive, and I know how I learned to drive on circuit, and it was all by, you know, perhaps watching the odd YouTube video, but certainly just by going out and driving and learning. And racing is something I've done on the steering wheel, on the PlayStation, you know, GT Sport and all that, sure, but it's a different world. And Racecraft, it's not just being able to control a car or being able to drive a car fast. It's now the car's competitive, and I found this at Alton Park in Donington. Now the car is competitive. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot to think about. You've got to be so alert all the time in the car, not just of your own vehicle, but being so alert of what's going on, especially in the rain. It was proper good. I'm not going to try and say it's not a good thing at all. It's a skill that I need to learn though, and yeah, just being able to control the car and just, you know, thinking you're fast. It's a different world, and a lot of these people have raced for a while, or, you know, people come, you know, to do karting and things like that. I did, you know, some PlayStation and some track days in my Integra, and there's a lot of people like me as well who've you know, completely foreign to this skill of trying to be a race driver. It's really good. I thought I'd have more to say on that, but it's something that I'm still really new to, so I don't want to try and sound like I'm an expert or anything. All I can tell you is that it's really good fun, and I'm really glad I did it. I would say that I perhaps should have done it sooner, but honestly I wouldn't have been able to afford doing it any sooner than I have. I mean, I'm 28 now, you know, I've been driving for over 10 years. Never thought I'd end up on the grid racing, and yeah, no one's paid for it other than myself. Like I say, I sold my K20 MR2, which was a lot of the funds towards it, and then, you know, I was chipping away at it last year, building the car, getting the license, buying the safety gear and all that. It's definitely been worth it, no doubt. One thing that I've kind of forgot to mention so far is getting your car to the racetrack. I think that's not included in my budget. I already had the estate car and the trailer, so that played in my favour somewhat. But a decent trailer and a bus to tow it about with, that's going to be £4 on top of that, really. Doing it the cheap way, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's another world. So I'm going to keep videoing about it anyway. I'm going to probably do some more videos about it now, I think. So in conclusion, it cost more than what I thought it would, but I have zero regrets. And the MR2 Championship is a bit busier than what I realised, and I might not always get to race, and I might not be able to try and compete for the championship, let's say. But it is what it is, and I'm hoping, I don't know if I've said this yet before, but hoping to race the Integra as well now. Track days are fun, and I still have a lot of good fun on track days, but I feel like I'm evolving a little bit now, and I'm more interested in the racing. So maybe that's a direction for the channel that you can link onto. So that's how much it costs to build my MR2 and do 3 races. If you're thinking about doing it, pick a different series, please, because I'd like to race, and I don't want you taking my spot.